Hello and welcome to the O&M Stockroom. We're your hosts, Brian McGarry.
And Ken O'Malley.
Tonight is episode 13 of Complimentary Cinema. If you're new to the channel, Complimentary Cinema is a program where we review and discuss films that you can watch for free on YouTube. Be warned that we discuss these films in detail, so consider this a full spoiler alerts. So tonight we have picked the 1989 film Arena. And it was my turn to pick this film, and I picked it in about, literally within the first 10 seconds of scrolling the free with ads section on the YouTube movie channel. And let's see. What drew me to it, this particular one, was Armin Shimmerman and Mark Alamo, who are both Star Trek Deep Space Nine alumni.
And not only just alumni, but excellent character actors.
Fantastic character actors. So that was how we picked this one this time around. Let's talk about our little cast of characters a little bit. We got Paul Satterfield as Steve Armstrong, Hamilton Camp as Shorty, Claudia Christian of Babylon 5 as Quinn, Mark Alamo as Rogor, Sherry Shattuck as Jade, Armin Shimmerman as Weasel, and a bunch of inconsequential background actors and such. So, how would you summarize, in one sentence, how would you summarize this film?
It's a shitty alien Rocky movie.
Shitty alien Rocky.
Or not even Rocky, just a shitty alien boxing movie.
I mean, see, for me, it was like Rocky versus meets Flash Gordon. Mm-hmm. Is kind of how it felt.
Yeah. There's a bunch of wacky aliens and very thin plot. So essentially, we find this really rundown, shitty looking space station just floating in space, which hosts the Arena, which is this intergalactic stadium for basically fight matches from species from all over the galaxy. And I mean, the space station really looks like a toilet. It's very rundown.
It's incredibly rundown. There's oil dripping off the walls and everything.
That's what I was going to say. You mentioned that during the film. It's like this place is just completely filthy, and it looks very well used. Very
well used. And the outside of it looked, I mean, they actually built the model, an actual, scale miniature model for this space station, and it looks like ass.
Yeah.
They could have actually they could have done something with it. They could have lit it nice. They could have added some extra windows. Maybe not made it like a box with the spinning top, but that's what they went for with this. And it just an ugly, just a very ugly space station. But apparently it's where it's the place to be if you're into these fight matches. And so early in the film, we basically see a slop house, a kind of fast food diner. And we meet and I use this term loosely, the hero of this film, Steve Armstrong, played by Paul Satterfield. And
he's a very pretty man.
He's a very pretty man. He's mostly just a square jaw.
He's got the appropriate number of abs.
He has the appropriate number of abs. He's got the pectorals. He's got the muscles. But he had it. So he plays the short order cook who gets into it with a customer, and it's oh, he can fight. Humans can't fight. Humans haven't won the fancy matches in 50 years. And here's the interesting thing about Steve. Steve trained his whole life for the matches. Steve he watched the old retransmissions of old matches with the old human heroes. And it's basically everything this guy ever wanted to do. And he even left Earth to come hang out at this shitty ass space station to fight in the matches. But since he got turned down right away, he just completely fucking gave up on his dream.
I'm so exasperated by this movie. This is the attempt at a backstory, is the fact that He just loved all this fighting, and like he has an encyclopedic knowledge of all the old fighters, and he even meets one of them or someone involved with it. It was like the homeless guy.
Yeah.
He he knows all this stuff, but apparently when he hit the first roadblock and he couldn't get into the fighting, he just gave up on it completely.
And became a short order cook, and a really bad one at that.
Somehow he kept all the muscles going, though.
But he kept all the muscles going. Apparently he kept training.
But he didn't.
Working out, but he
gave up.
But he gave up. Whatever. The plot's a mess. So long story short, so he loses his job. The guy who hired him, Shorty.
He's a four-armed alien.
He's a four-armed alien who basically looks human, but with 4 arms. Basically, it's one guy walking around with another guy kind of hugging him. And it's incredibly distracting for the whole film.
And then in all the long shots, the arms are either under his cloak or they're just hanging down.
They're just prosthetics, just hanging down, yeah.
I noticed that immediately when I was walking around hallways. His arms are just flopping around.
Just flopping, yeah. Just mannequin arms, just wiggling around. Yeah, so anyway, so Steve gets in this fight with with an angry customer, and instead of the customer's always right, they just kick the customer's ass and throw him through a fucking window. Which, having worked in restaurants and in, the service sector for a long time, I understand. I don't necessarily condone it, but I understand.
We all have been there at some
point. We've all been there.
We wanted to be there.
So he loses his job, which means he also loses his quote-unquote crib, is basically the cage that he's been sleeping in.
Yeah, and they talk about how if you don't have a job, then you're delinquent, so they can extradite you from the station, or what's the word? They kick you out.
Yeah, they evict you, whatever.
Yeah, eviction, I guess.
Which is funny because all that this guy wants is to go back to Earth, right?
Yes.
So if they export him, there we go.
Export.
If they export, I can't remember. We don't have the mouth words right now. I'm sorry.
But where were they going to send him?
Where are they going to send him? Back to Earth?
I
mean, that's kind of what he wants,
Yeah.
Would it be to? Who knows? They don't say, and nobody cares enough to
labor
find
camps.
out. To labor camps, yeah.
So anyway, Shorty's got him covered. He's basically, there's like this whole underground, like people living in the tunnels. They call it the tubes.
The tubes.
And so basically there's a bunch of people living in the cracks of the station down in, I don't even know what this area was supposed to be.
The plumbing.
It's basically the plumbing, utility tunnels and stuff. And he's got a nice little place in there.
He's got a sweet little pad.
Yeah, it's trashy, but it's nicer than a lot of where the other people are living.
Which apparently were metal cribs.
Right. So yeah, he's got a nice little place, and they're gonna start over. He's gonna do something new. They're talking about different jobs or whatever, and
for some reason that I never quite figured out, but
it was because that guy. The guy that he fought in the diner was a fighter.
Yes, Vang.
Fighting for Quinn. So Quinn's guys came to beat him up because he beat up Quinn's guy.
And they come and they beat him up. And here's the thing. So, there's...
If that sounded confusing, we were both confused when they showed up to beat him up.
Yeah, that didn't really necessarily make sense. Because it's like, so the first thing they tell you about Steve is that, oh my God, he's a fighter. This guy can fight. He loves fights. He loves watching the fights. He's trained all of his life to fight. And in the second time we see him in an altercation, he gets his ass kicked by 2 not terribly impressive guys.
Yeah, normal guys.
Just 2 normal guys just getting the shit kicked out of him.
He gets thrown in piles of trash, through pipes and all around this whole set.
Yeah, and then Quinn shows up. Oh man, the great reveal for Quinn is great. When she comes walking through and like the smoke just kind of billows away. That was great. And random. Okay, and I just going back a little bit. Prior to all of this, we see Quinn with another one of her fighters, Spinner, which I don't even know what the hell that thing was.
I love Spinner. I wish he would have come back later in the movie.
Yeah, he really deserved it. He basically was like a robot reptile thing.
Yeah. With
like a half helmet head.
Yeah. And like part of the back of his helmet was like his brain was exposed too. And there was like a glass thing over it. It was very interesting.
Just a dome piece, yeah. So, but anyway, so he was fighting. Oh God, if this sounds convoluted, it is.
Horn.
Ugh. Horn was Mr. Rogar's champion fighter. Mr. Rogar being Mark Alemo.
He was kind of like a half android, half minotaur kind of guy.
He reminded me most really of Beastman from Masters of the Universe, just with like some mechanical prosthetics thrown into the mix. So long story short, so you got Quinn who has all these people that she's training to fight, and then you got Mr. Rogar who's got presumably somebody more than Mr. Horn, but we never really see any fighters other than Horn.
Yeah, well, who's Mr. Rogar?
Mark Alemo.
We didn't.
He's the other. He's the other guy who.
I know who it is. I'm asking for the audience here.
Well, I'm trying to explain for the audience.
Oh, okay.
But why don't you explain, Ken, since you got this?
He's the bad guy. He is the overseer of the games, and he's kind of in charge of the championship, and he also tries to kind of fix matches the way he wants them to go.
And to call Mr. Rogar the bad guy,
yeah,
he's probably like the most bad guy.
He's the head guy in charge.
He's the head guy in charge of some of the bad guys.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't say there are actually any likable good people in the film, except for maybe Shorty.
Yeah, he's not really likable though. He's just the least offensive,
the least awful.
Yeah,
bad guy, I guess would be Shorty.
He threw the one guy off the scaffolding. That's why
true.
I like Shorty.
He does have blood on his hands. I don't think Steve ever killed anybody in this film, but Shorty did.
There.
I don't even think Mr. Rogar killed anybody in this film.
Huh.
I mean, we're kind of jumping to the end of the film.
Did anyone else die in this movie?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that the only two people who died because of Mr. Shorty.
Huh. Interesting.
So this movie is really about Shorty the killer.
So I would say he is the hero then, because he rid us of more people from this.
He rid us of a couple of terrible characters.
So anyway, there's basically the fighting people and their sponsors is really what the movie's about then. So Shorty is playing the coach kind of role. He's the coach for the good guys.
Yeah, Steve being our blonde, square-jawed Flash Gordon Rocky.
And then Quinn is the producer. She's
like the
trainer.
She's like the Don King of the good guys.
Yeah.
Mr. Rogar being like the Don King of the bad guys.
Yeah. And then there's some other supporting people. But then that's mostly it.
That's pretty much it. That's the entire cast.
And so it's then about their struggles, because despite the fact that he's trained all of his life to fight, as we've established, and they've established in the film, and that he loves the fights and the arena is everything to him, he absolutely does not want to fight.
He's very adamant on that fact, because like because Shorty keeps trying to talk him into it, and then Quinn approaches him after he kicked her fighter's ass. She's like, "Hey, come fight with me," and he's just like, "No, you can't make me. I don't want to fight. It's all they've ever wanted. It's all they've ever trained for, but I'm not gonna." It's
like literally the one person who could put you in a fight is standing in front of you, just asking you to fight.
After toiling away on this shithouse space station for a year, doing, basically, crappy odd jobs.
And as far as we can tell, being a fighter is like the best job on the station. Everywhere else just looks like a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it's just full of like poverty and crime and
people that are really excited about violence.
And a lot of people excited about violence. A lot of violence on the space station. I mean, it's not a safe place for kids.
No.
And yet there are children.
Yes.
And who knows what other horrors they're subjected to. There's probably drug use, prostitution.
This movie truly is about the poverty and it says a lot, you know. It's got a really big message.
And this guy just wants to go back to Earth instead of fighting, which is what he trained and traveled all that way to do anyway.
Yeah.
So that would be, in episodes in the past where we've talked about like the biggest, plot hole or, bad plot point, that would definitely be it for this one.
See, like if they were going to show that he didn't want to fight, they should have had a reason. Something else happened that made him not want to fight. Not, I just couldn't get a gig. And then now that I could get a gig, I still don't want it. He needed to have another. He just didn't have any character story at all.
He really didn't. Like if he'd been like, like I got into a fight and like it back in when I first got to the station, and then it upset my sister, and then she jumped off a bridge. Or like that would make sense.
Or like
right?
I was in a fight and I killed a man accidentally. Like, and I was scarred by it, and it was terrible.
And
something.
It's just amazing how like a sentence or two of dialogue could have fixed that.
Or it could have been like, oh, I saw the terrible underbelly of this beast, and I didn't want to be involved in it anymore. There's literally hundreds of ways we could have solved this problem.
So many ways that we could have just cleaned that up instead of him just being reluctant and calcitrant for no reason.
Yeah.
But there we are.
But that's what we're left with. So that's what we have to deal with. So they have no money. Shorty's big idea of how they're going to get money is they're going to go gamble it. They're going to gamble for the winnings to get him off of this place.
Yeah, and that's because here's the other thing. Because Shorty, I must have missed it.
Yeah.
But Shorty is hellbent on paying some debt, some like moral debt to Steve.
Yeah, basically because apparently that's in their culture, is that since Steve protected him from the customer during the fight situation, fought for his honor, he's now honor bound to Steve to make sure he gets what he needs, which is to get out of this place. So
and Shorty was super pushy about that too.
Yeah,
like too pushy.
Yeah. Shorty basically took over his life.
Uncomfortably pushy. Yeah, it's like, oh, I owe you this life debt, so now you're gonna just do everything I need you to do now.
Yeah. So anyway, he decides gambling is going to be the best way to get the money they need.
And my favorite thing too is like this place where they go to gamble. It's like presented like a speakeasy,
mm-hmm.
and the password to get in is swordfish. And I don't have any other real thoughts about that other than that's an interesting choice for a password,
especially
for a futuristic space.
Especially there's no water or fish.
There's no oceans nearby. I mean I don't know. Maybe that's why. Maybe because it would be such an uncommon thing to say. Like other good ideas for like passwords could have been good writing. Astute direction.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good makeup. Just some ideas. So they get in, they go to gamble, and what happens? But Commissioner Dent, he's kind of like a
slightly before that, we meet sexy gambler lady.
We do meet sexy gambler lady,
who's just another person here, and she's gambling.
Jade, played by Sherry Shattuck. So she has a couple scenes in the film.
Yeah.
But she's she's kind of gambling. She's like, tells Steve like, oh, it's where I'm from, it's bad luck to play the same game of chance twice.
Yeah, they do a little flirting.
Steve cups her ball and then gives it a toss, and she wins, and then he's her lucky charm after that, quote unquote.
And then it turns out that Shorty's a terrible gambler and loses all the money immediately.
Yes. And then Commissioner Dent, the man who runs this space station, or at least is the figurehead of it. I mean, he seems to be
the authority figure.
He seems to be pretty fucking powerless to me, but so he shows up with a bunch of like robot police straight out of THX 1138. George Lucas's first film. They have like these robotic policemen, and these guys look like they're straight out of that film. The inspiration and influence for that was pretty clear. So they break up this gambling house, this little speakeasy, and Shorty and Steve, they grab a whole bunch of money, they take off. Shorty buys Steve a ticket back to Earth.
And then there was another side character is the henchman character of Weasel.
And
that's
Armin Shimmerman, yeah.
That's the henchman for
Rogar. Yes.
So he saw them take the money. So that's the other wrinkle in the thing. Is this henchman guy? He's kind of the eyes everywhere. He's observing what's going on.
Very weaselly.
So he knows that they took the money, and that because it's funny at that point in the movie, I'm like, okay, he bought a ticket off the station. Now the movie's over. He doesn't have to fight. Yay.
We're like, yay, he can go home and that'll be the end of it, and we don't have to sit through the rest of this film.
And then another hour of movie happened.
Which felt like 3 hours, but it was only 1. But time flies when you're having fun, right, Ken?
Sure.
So anyway, Rogar summons them to his like bad 80s futuristic office and basically threatens them if he doesn't get back the 18,000 Kruger that was stolen from him. And I just think it's funny because when they say, the monetary unit of currency is called the Kruger. And when Mark Alamo's character says Kruger, he does the thing with the fingers to like evoke Freddy Krueger, which I thought was terribly tacky, but also funny.
It's just the way he moved at that time. Just happened to line up.
It was just, yeah. So at this point, Steve, Mr. I don't want to fight, you can't make me fight, goes straight up to Quinn and basically, says like, hey, I'll fight for you.
Yeah, basically. Then give me the money to cover it and I'll fight.
So he gets the money and then he gives it to Rogar and then they leave and there's training.
There's fighting montage.
And there's fighting montages and Steve is pretty good. He's like the first human like in 50 years to like not get his ass kicked by all these other ridiculous aliens.
Apparently he's got to do it like the hard way where he's got to like fight everyone on his way up.
Yeah, because it is kind of a lengthy montage of fights. Fight 1, fight 2, fight 4, fight 5, fight 6, so on. And then they end up at the point. Wow, God.
So sexy gambler lady tries to seduce him because it turns out she's
Rogar's dame.
Yeah, she's Rogar's girlfriend. So she tries to get in with Steve so she can poison him.
And Steve couldn't resist because she had boob window dress.
Yes.
There was side boob on both sides.
She was hot gambling chick.
And
Quinn was not. She was just normal fitness lady.
Yeah, normal fitness lady or like hot gambling chick who sings also.
Also sings. You're right. I forgot about that. She had a performance. It was really special. And not a good special.
The lyrics to that song were absolutely, positively dreadful.
The song to that song was positively dreadful.
So Jade shows up at the gym, like on the eve of like the big fight, and distracts, Steve and his giant chin. And he ends up chasing after her and is like, "Hey, I really would love to relax." And she's like, "Ooh, am I supposed to help you relax?" And he's like, "Well, why not?" So she gives him a piece of plastic with her name on it, which I guess is like the key to her room.
Mm-hmm.
And, he shows up and there's, shall we say fornication that happens?
Yeah.
Some sexual congress occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And then she poisons the guy.
Yeah.
Because, who didn't see that coming?
Mm-hmm.
That was Rogar's big plan to
influence the match.
To influence the final match, that would make Steve champion. Because if Steve becomes champion, Rogar's guy Horn isn't champion anymore.
Right.
And then Rogar loses all the rights and privileges of being the champion runner.
Yeah, and he can't do the sketchy gambling stuff anymore.
That's true.
If he's not at the top.
If he's not at the top, he does not have special privileges.
Yep.
It's funny how that works in life,
Mm-hmm.
You have to be thoroughly unscrupulous and evil to rise to the top.
Is that what this movie's the story is?
Absolutely not. They did not think that far ahead or that deeply. So anyway, in the nick of time, Steve almost dies, but then he's magically rejuvenated by
Dr. Man.
By Dr. Man, who's like, "I don't take no responsibility if he fights." And and guess what? He fights, and
they got to load him up with mega crystals or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah,
so they reverse the effect of the poison. But then
the
other thing is that Weasel is setting up there's like a fairness machine.
So there's I can't remember what it's called.
The
it doesn't matter.
Equivitron or
So every match that takes place on this space station, you've got like a badly drawn blue beam and a badly drawn red beam, one of which goes over each contestant. And it evens out their skill levels and their abilities by, reducing the stronger opponent's abilities by whatever percentage of Krell. Krell, if the YouTube closed captioning can be trusted, which I don't think it can most times. And in this particular case, about after the first round, Armin Shimmerman's character, Weasel, and another character who I'll just call Fuckboy. I mean, he just looks like a bitch.
Brain computer guy.
Skull, I guess was his name. I mean, nobody cares about him.
No.
He's not important to anything. He's really not. So anyway, they rig up the device to give Horn an advantage. So Horn's, kicking Steve's ass. Steve's just getting absolutely clobbered. And this is where Shorty comes in and commits.
He could see something's up because all of a sudden Steve is weak out of nowhere. It's because this machine is trying to make things fair by making him weak because they've reprogrammed it.
Yes, and he notices the lights are flashing weird or something. So he's like, I smell a rat or a weasel. And then he goes up and confronts Armin Shimmerman in a real pansy-ass fight.
Yeah.
Which is it's just funny because, a film based on fighting and like ultra violence and like these huge ridiculous monsters and kicks and punches and blood. And it's like two 10-year-old boys just like having a scuffle in the sandbox.
It's real bad.
It's just bad. But anyway.
There's like the shots up through the grating on the floor of just two men rolling around.
Just kind of like pansily slapping each other and everything. It's ridiculous. But the end result of that is, the machinery gets shorted out. It turns off this device. And then Skull, who's like plugged into it with his brain, he gets electrocuted and just his head explodes. And that's about the most interesting thing that character did. And, and guess what? Steve's suddenly all better. Now he wins the fight, and that's pretty much the end of it.
Yes.
That's the film.
That is...
Basically, it's the film. It's the film about the boy who didn't want to fight, but really did, but didn't. And who had all the odds against him, but still won anyway. I mean, am I really missing much out of there?
No.
I mean, within about 10, 12 minutes, I was already regretting having picked this one tonight. But
and he has no... Horn is the proxy between Steve and the bad guy. And then after the fight, there is no final confrontation.
Oh, none.
They go their separate ways.
Just all's well that ends well.
Our hero is victorious, and all of his friends are happy. And the credits roll.
That was a very abrupt ending.
It was so bad. Everything was so bad.
So let's get specific about how bad things are.
If you haven't figured it out yet, this movie was so terrible.
It was terrible in some respects, sure. But so first off, let's actually talk about some of the good things about this film.
Okay.
Because this film actually does have some good points to it.
The first good thing that I noticed is that they have sets.
They have a lot of sets.
They're varied. They are pretty good looking as far as they look like a beat down space station. In the
parts that need to be a beat down space station.
Right. And then the kind of nice areas look very different. They do stand out. So
it's like, you have their main corridor hallways, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have like the arena. You have Rogar's office. You have his little box in the arena. You have the gym.
Mm-hmm.
You have like the little diner that Steve was working at.
Yep.
You have the tubes.
Yep.
You have Jade's apartment. Jade being sexy gambler girl. And there's at least a few more in there. I mean, there's like a good 10 to 15 sets in here.
Because there's also the place where he was staying before.
Yeah.
There's I don't know. There's some other random places.
Like there is a lot of unique sets for this film that don't really seem to reuse parts either, from what I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually really impressed by that, because this is definitely a low budget film. But just, like the nightclub scene, oh man, like, yeah. So
nightclub, the casinos.
The casinos. I mean, like the way so either it's like very creative reuse of sets that already existed, or they really did have, like separate sets for all of these. Either way, there's a lot of visual interest on the screen as to what's going on.
And then to complement all that, we have a whole lot of extras.
A crap ton of extras.
There's a lot of bodies in this film in a good way, and then makes the station feel like it's alive. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of different alien costumes, and a lot of different, all the people were wearing all different costumes.
And not to evoke Deep Space Nine again, or Babylon 5 for that matter, but it actually felt like a living, breathing space station in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
With all the different races, with all the different outfits. Like even like Sexy Gambler Lady, she has like 3 scenes, and she pretty much has a different costume in every scene.
Yeah.
Steve has a bunch of different costumes. So, I mean, there's a huge wardrobe selection for this film, huge extra selection, a ton of prosthetic masks and that kind of thing. Some special effects, not a ton, but some. I mean, all things considered, it was a fairly sizable production, and it was punching above its height.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So those are definitely some good points about this film. Not all of the makeup was good.
No, but a couple of them were good.
A couple of them were really good. Armin Shimmerman's Weasel character, they did a really great job with his prosthetics. He definitely has a very, furry, weaselly face. He's got full gloves. He's got contacts, dentures of a sort. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you would call those offhand. Fake teeth. And, he looks convincing. Like, you would not, if you weren't looking for Armin Shimmerman, you sure wouldn't have seen him. You really only tell him by the voice. And on the flip side of that, you've got like people that are clearly just walking around in a rubber mask.
Yeah.
And you do have quite a few of those. But to their credit, there's a lot of rubber masks.
And they tried well enough too with the combatants, as far as they had a number of way different looking aliens with different kind of capabilities, mm-hmm. as far as the fights went. So that was pretty good. And none of them looked realistic, but none of them looked absolutely terrible. They're rubber suits or whatever, but
yeah, but there's one, I can't remember what that character's might have. There was one that was like multi-segmented.
Mm. Where you could see the flapping.
Yeah, where he was almost like kind of like not a centipede, but like,
yeah.
Like he had like a thorax and everything. And that was a really well done
mm-hmm.
one, not necessarily for how it looked necessarily, but like just the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And just the fact they were able to pull that off, I was really impressed with.
It was interesting.
It was good. I thought it was pretty good. For the time and for whatever budget they had to work with, we can't find any info about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was so those were some pretty good things about this film. And the fact that they even did build some actual like miniatures for like some of the space shots and stuff. Now let's talk about some of the negative things about this film.
All the rest of the things.
All the rest of it.
I also mentioned at one point while we were watching this. This is like the first movie I've seen where the world building made the movie worse as it went along, and it just everything felt so one dimensional, and like there's no greater purpose to anything.
I really felt like they were trying to push the whole like Star Wars Cantina thing on us a little bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were definitely trying to make up for their lack of story and lack of strength in the writing with all the visuals and with all the busyness.
Mm-hmm.
And even towards the end of the film, even some of that started to fall apart. Like there's a good close up of Mark Alamo's character toward the end, and you can see the line all around his face where his hairpiece is attached to his skin. And his makeup was inconsistent too. Sometimes he's like very silvery, and other times he's almost flesh toned.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was I couldn't believe I didn't notice this till you pointed it out, but like we didn't go back to watch, but in the final battle between Steve and Horn, you know, we went back a few seconds to look, and there are, because it looks like there's a whole bunch of people in the crowd, right?
And like it's a pretty decent arena.
It's a decent arena. Like you've got like I'd say 3-4 rows maybe worth of people, like, you know, kind of close up. And then behind them are what look like cardboard cutouts wearing clothes. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it.
Because I didn't see it in any of the earlier fights. I'm sure it was there.
I'm sure it was too, but once I noticed it, I could not unsee it.
Yeah. Because the way they shoot it in a couple different times, you can see it looks like there's like 5 rows of people because you're just seeing the end, like on the aisle of those people, and it's only a couple people. Yeah, but then in those wide shots, you can see those upper rows are not, in fact, people.
Yeah, they're real, and it's badly obvious that they're not. And they even made up a few of them to look like robots, which was probably a wise move, because robots wouldn't have like that organic, you know, movement to them.
But the only reason I picked up on it was because they had a mid shot. They had 2 mid shots where you could see it closer. And the long shots where they were fighting, I probably never would have noticed it if it weren't for those.
Like, yeah,
it was a crowd reaction shot.
Yeah, if they'd kept like that just a little more... See, like what they could have done is just kept the focus a little softer and then mixed up some... I mean, you know, all you had to do was like change costumes on a few people, move a few people around, you know, put a couple of people back in with those cardboard, and nobody would have known.
Yeah.
It would have been so easy to have gotten around that.
But once the veil was removed, it
just stared at you in the face.
Yeah.
The entire rest of the battle.
Then you could see it in every long shot for the rest of the fight.
And the only other thing that was as distracting as that was the giant wire sticking from Steve's belt when he's about to get thrown by Horn. Like that was pretty bad.
Yeah, the lights are just glaring off of it, so you can see the wire.
It was clear as day. Kind of makes you wonder too if like the guy playing Horn was supposed to be such a badass, or the character of Horn was supposed to be such a badass fighter. They couldn't find a guy to like lift up this other dude.
I mean,
did that really require a wire?
None of the fighting was really impressive or technical anyway. I mean, it was mostly just like this guy smacking these rubber monsters.
It was kind of like the film equivalent of like a button masher video game, like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. Like especially when you don't know what you're doing.
It's dumb
early
fighting.
on. You're just like fight, punch, kick.
Because usually like in a fighting movie, it's like the technique or like the differentiator between this guy and that guy. But in this, it's just it's a different looking alien. So the big guy, he's gotta smack him real hard. And he does his patented jump kick.
Steve's got amazing jump kicks.
That's like his move to knock people out.
Man, it reminds me of like when I was a little kid, like in the early 90s, I remember seeing this comedy show. And there was this recurring segment. I can't remember what show it was. But there was this guy, he'd like be like in the forest or whatever, and he would just kind of jump up and like his legs would just kind of fly through the forest at like whatever person he was chasing. And he would like fly for like, a couple 100 yards before like, getting him with his legs. And just Steve's flying jump kick just kind of evoked that for me just a little bit. Just reminded me of those old comedy shows.
Yeah.
That was a bittersweet moment. The halcyon days.
Okay. Now the real problem with this movie, which I keep finding, and we find every time we watch one of these lower budget movies, we were saying, it's trying to punch way above where it should be, is that they always fail on the character writing.
Always.
Every time. It's like you could have a low budget, but if your character development is good, it wouldn't be so bad. This would have been an okay movie to watch if it had some better character development. Even if they kept the same sets, same costumes, everything else, and you cared a little bit more about the characters.
I mean, good writing just makes all the difference. And I just think about like, theater productions. How many like fantastically well-written theater productions have been staged with, almost no costume changes, with very minimal set building, or, even just literally just a stage and some lights. Like, how many fantastic stories have been told that way with, good acting that have absolutely mesmerized audiences. Like, when you're given like a certain amount of money for a film and you rely on all these other little tricks to just get around not telling a good story, I mean, what is the point?
Because, like, as a concept, it's not that this movie is irredeemable. I mean, it's a simple story. It's your classic fighting story. But it's all the other stuff that just makes you not care about it.
It's like you never care about Steve.
No.
Like, he's never really relatable. He's never particularly likable. He's never really unlikable.
He doesn't want to do what you want him to do. As a hero character.
Yeah, he really doesn't. He's Quinn never really steps outside of her kind of ill-defined mentor role. Shorty is very, very one-dimensional. It's like, oh, I'm going to help you, kid. I'm going to help you, kid. I'm going to help you, kid. That's his whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Alamo is a fantastic, actor, and this movie doesn't serve him any justice either.
No.
He doesn't have enough to work with. He's also a one-dimensional character. It really is. This whole movie is just like embarrassing sci-fi schlock. And it's what a bunch of talentless nerds would come up with, like, for a fanfic. And then they just filmed it. It's like they like the visuals, they like the effects, they know like they like certain kinds of characters, but they don't know what to do with that. That's exactly what this is.
Right. Yep, definitely. It's definitely one of those cases of like, oh, if I show you this thing, you're just going to like it because it's a weird science fiction thing. But if there's not purpose behind why things happen or how they happen, then it's just moving from one scene to the next we don't have any connection. Like you said, we don't really care for the main character at any point.
Yeah, I mean, you're never really rooting for him. You're never really rooting for anybody.
Not really sympathetic to him.
I mean, like, the movie makes it seem like you should care about him, but you never get there. Why should you care about this guy?
Yeah. I like the Weasel guy.
Yeah, I like Weasel too. Armin Shimmerman is a great actor.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the higher points of this film, easily. Everybody else, I mean, they're just there. And that's a wrap on this one. I mean, what else can you possibly say about it? So like, let's talk about some of the extraneous characters, shall we? I mean, how many of them are there? They're pretty much, Quinn's like two.
Okay, if we had to pick one, I would say the Skull.
Yeah, Skull. Okay, Skull is a good choice because we see him early on in the film, right after they lose their jobs and they go down to the tubes, and they go to Shorty's apartment. Skull is in there, and the way like it zooms in on him and everything, and it's like, oh shit, this guy's here. But he's just like this weird little twerp with a weird voice.
Yeah.
And then he goes away.
Well, and his purpose at the beginning is, oh, I'm going to help you fix the matches.
Yeah.
I figured out how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
But they'd say, no, we're not going to do that. And he goes away. And then he only comes back at the end of the movie when the bad guy needs to fix the matches. And then he's there to help him do that.
And the amazing thing is they could have completely written him out. And it could have just been Weasel that came up with that idea.
Absolutely.
Weasel presented that idea to Rogar anyway.
Because we didn't know Weasel wasn't a technical guy. Sure, yeah. Maybe he could figure it out. I don't know.
Weasel's kind of like, multifaceted, henchman,
Yeah.
We saw that he could play cards.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that he was handy with a gun.
Yes.
Who knows what other talents he may possess. It is the future.
He's good at being sneaky.
He's good at being sneaky. He can get in and out of bad situations.
Getting out of secure areas. He does get into the computer room.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm just saying, like, this is the distant future. I would assume just about everybody would have at least, a basic competency with computers. So to be, well adept with computers is just not much of a leap.
Yeah. So I think that was, as far as characters who supposedly like had lines, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
it was definitely the one I would just get rid of.
You could, yeah. I just the way that they introduced him cracked me up though, because they really made it like, oh god, this guy's gonna be like,
this is gonna be a
thing, and he's just not a thing at all.
No,
it's like he shows up to try to offer them help, and then he shows up, squirming behind Weasel when Weasel gives the proposition to Rogar, and then you basically see him at the end when his head explodes.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no reason for any of that.
Mm-mm.
That was a waste of props. That was a waste of film time. That was a waste of that actor's time. That was a waste of our time, Ken.
Yes, it was. They could have given that time to Spinner. We could have brought Spinner back. And, Spinner's adorable. I wanted to see Spinner again.
He's just this, like, big, goofy reptile, like, in a robot suit.
And he's so sad because he lost the first fight so bad, and like it damaged his robot parts apparently, and like they can't fix them. And he's like, "No, don't retire me."
Oh, if anybody, he was the most sympathetic and most likable character in this entire film.
I would root it for Spinner.
I like Spinner too.
Yeah,
he was like, he had that danger, Will Robinson robot vibe going. But he was also like part reptile
robot. Like that's the perfect combination.
Yeah, it was great. But like also like, with like that that bumbling fool kind of persona.
Yes.
It's like, no, I can still fight. Don't retire me. Which is not the kind of like voice and everything you would expect.
Yeah.
From that character.
It was great. I was really hoping he was going to come back, and that was the end of the movie for him.
Should have renamed this film Arena and the Adventures of Spinner. And then gotten rid of like half the other characters.
We can make our own sequel.
We should.
Straight to home video.
All right, so like our next couple films, let's pick some good ones.
Yeah. Yeah, this was definitely a dud.
Yeah, this was dismal. So I think it's fair to say we don't recommend this one.
Do not watch this movie.
Don't watch it
under any circumstances.
Even if you're a fan. Okay, so I was a huge Star Trek nerd growing up. I'd even go as far as to say Star Trek dork.
Yeah. And
I watched Deep Space Nine from the time it aired to the time it went off the air.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Next Generation. Loved Quark, loved Gul Dukat, loved those actors. And they're basically wasted on this. I would say that Armin Shimmerman gives the best performance.
Yeah, for sure.
But even so, it's not his best work, and it's certainly not representative of what he is capable of. And it's, when you look at people like Mark Alamo and Claudia Christian and Armin Shimmerman in a movie like this, all you can see is just wanted to work, just flash across the screen. They just wanted to be in front of a camera and put something on their resume that, like, I did a film.
I think there's something to be said too for some of these movies, like, it has the look and sounds of a movie. So I think sometimes these people too, they don't know exactly how bad the movie's going to be.
Sure. They hope for they see what they have to work with, and they just kind of hope for the best too.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that is how sometimes people come to these movies. It's like, oh, this looks all right, but then the finished product is just terrible. And this movie isn't even like you can have fun watching it because it's bad. It's just a chore to get through.
It wasn't a chore at first, but it definitely became a chore after like the 40-minute mark. I know for you it was probably within 5 minutes, but for me it took me about halfway through the film before I was just finally like, shit.
This was a oh no, what have we done movie, like right from the beginning for me.
Those fades though between the scenes, the transitions. Those are pretty bad.
Yeah.
I mean, this really does look like a made-for-TV film. And it took, So it's not even, I can't even find definitive info on when this film was made. YouTube says 1991. Other places say 1989. And then in the trivia on IMDb says 1988.
Yeah.
So apparently it was made around 88 or 89 and actually released in 91.
Right.
So that's another thing that's like not very promising.
No.
So they made it and they probably showed it to people who helped finance it.
And they couldn't find anyone to distribute it.
And they were like, there's no way we're going to put out this piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it probably ended up like direct to video.
Yeah.
And they probably never made their money back either. Because what would possibly compel you to pick this up at the time in 91?
Nothing.
There's
nothing good here.
There's nothing good here. And so you have it.
Save your brain cells.
Save your brain cells. Save your time. All right, I guess that's a wrap on this one. If you enjoyed this segment, please subscribe to our channel on YouTube or follow us wherever you're listening.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with a brand new review here on Complimentary Cinema at the O&M Stockroom. I have been your host, Ken O'Malley.
I'm Brian McGarry.
Thank you again.